Welcome to this episode of the She Heals the World talk show, where we will be sharing inspiring, heart centered stories of entrepreneurs who are making a difference in the world. And today I am happy to be sharing this time in this space with Colleen Rosenblum. Colleen is a former attorney, Pilates instructor, and now podcaster. Lots of different hats there, huh? She married her
Yes.
high school sweetheart, and they have two incredible daughters. Colleen loves discovering the best kept secrets on midlife and beyond. Welcome, Colleen, and thank you for being here with us.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I am as well. So, can you introduce yourself a little bit more? I know we just read your quick little bio and then share a little bit about your business journey.
Sure. So, as my bio shows, I was an attorney for a long time. I have like a 12-year pivot. I like to say for some reason in 12 years, I start to get like that desire to change. And in being an attorney, I never really felt fulfilled personally. I think being in your 20s and early 30s, you're kind of just going through what you expect. You're meeting everyone else's expectations as opposed to your own. So when I had my children, I decided to stay home with them for a little bit and enjoy that journey. And then as they got to be school age, I said, okay, I don't want to go back to the law, but I really don't know what I want to do. And so I said, okay, I'm clear as to what I don't want to do. Maybe that's where I start. And so everyone was saying, let's exercise. It'll clear your head. So I went and I started taking Pilates, fell in love with it, decided to learn more about it. I often will say that Pilates school was harder than law school
Really?
because I wasn't studying the body and our makeup and where are the muscles and the bones and then it's a lot of hands-on. It took about gosh, I want to say it was a year and I had 600 hours of internship where I had to teach classes. So it really prepared you
Mm-hmm.
for teaching. I loved teaching. I brought, like I do with each of my career pivots, I take what I've learned from the last one and bring it with me. So I was very strong in research and interest in learning about people and things. So I kind of became half teacher, half psychologist in Pilates,
I love that.
which was wonderful. Loved every second of it. But when my kids graduated high school and I moved to a different state because I wanted to try something different, my husband and then I wanted to do something that maybe was a little more related to my age range. And at the time I was about 51, somewhere around there. A friend of mine started a podcast and we were chatting about it. And I said, I wonder how many podcasts there are that speak to my demographic. And this is 2019, right before the pandemic hit. And I was perimenopausal, as so many women talk about now, but it was not talked about in
It was
2019.
not. No,
No, it's a
not at all. Yes.
very new discussion.
Yes.
So a friend of mine, Bridget, who's my co-host, we couldn't find anything. And we said, oh, let's do it. Having no media background, I did get a mass communications degree from Boston University going back, a little bit ago.
Oh,
So
you
I
have
did have
something under your belt. That's not common. Most people don't just have this random communication degree.
but I really hadn't used it, which is a shame because in retrospect, I think I could have blended that into the law a little more. But you live, you learn. And so we started this podcast, and really the trajectory was like amazing because the conversation around menopause exploded at the same time. So we kind of put our seatbelts on and decided to ride the wave with not a certain directional path, but saying, we'll just try. It's one thing really nice about your 50s is you're like, let me try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then that's fine. It's a life lesson. And we were pleasantly surprised that the podcast kept growing and growing. We're now in the top 1.5% of global podcasts, which is insane.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We love what we're doing. We do in-person events now, and it's just been when you have a passion for what you do, when you relate to it, I think that just brings a special added bonus. And so that's what we've been doing so far. So it's 5 years now, and we really truly love every minute of doing it.
I love that. And I love how you've tied it all together. That's so important. Was there a pivotal moment in the podcast portion that has led you to where you are now?
I would say there's a couple of moments when we were going through the pandemic, we had the opportunity that a lot of people were home. So we were able to speak to not only some of the foremost experts for menopause, perimenopause, but we also got to speak to a lot of women who are celebrities, who are authors, people that maybe in the beginning would not have said yes had they not been home for the pandemic. But once we started doing that, we realized, wait, there's so many stories to tell and they're not being told. No one is telling these stories, and it gave us this desire to get as much information out to women because women deserve the correct evidence-based information. But we didn't just want to be a menopause podcast. We wanted to talk about everything. So whether it was relationships or whether it was your health or it was changing careers, whatever it was, we found that the more we dove in, the more there was to find. And I think that that kind of one of the first interviews we did with a celebrity was probably Fran Drescher or wasn't Patricia Heaton, but one of the celebrities. And I was like, if someone would have said to me 5 years ago that I'd be sitting here talking to them, I would have said, you need your head examined. But it goes to show you that you never know where your life is going to take you. You
Yes.
just kind of have to be open and get and take those tiny steps out of your comfort zone, which was something I think was really a pivotal moment for us when we realized, wait, we have something to say here and it's resonating with people. They want to know, women and men, because we have male listeners too, they
Mhm.
want to know more about this time of life, the 50s, 60s plus, that it's not what the media is portraying us to be. So I would say that starting to get really deep into the conversations, um, we always enjoy, we would say, oh, it's a 30-minute interview, and an hour and a half later, we'd still be talking. And we're like, okay, there's a lot to say here. And it just see that commonality between women and men, and when we have a passion, when we have an interest in something, it's really interesting to watch it kind of flourish.
How, so you, when we first spoke, you had mentioned that, I believe, and you had mentioned that you you don't accept no for an answer very often. That
Yes, I don't.
so, which is great. I'm sure it was fantastic, especially with
Within reason,
well,
within
yeah,
reason.
sure it was really beneficial for your attorney background as well.
Mhm.
Sure, made you very successful in that. How did you approach reaching out to celebrities and really that did you experience any kind of imposter syndrome, you or your friend who you have
My co-host,
Mhm.
my co-host was terrified of what we were doing at first because it was really out of her comfort zone. Um, for me, I get so consumed with this is what I want to have done and I need to get it done. Let's just figure out how to do it. I'm result oriented.
Okay.
And maybe because I had a legal background, it made me less intimidated or feel like an imposter in asking for guests. Because, if we're on with one guest and I know, and they mention that they have a friend who is so and so, I have no problem after the interview going, listen, I would love to talk to so and so about this. Bridget, my co host, would have been mortified to do it. She would, that's not what she's very strong in storytelling, but she's not comfortable in kind of stepping out and saying, well, what about this? And I am. So it's complimentary.
Mhm.
But I never really had a problem with. Here's the thing, they're either not going to respond to you or they're going to say no. Either way, that's fine. Or you're going to get a yes, which, you're not going to know unless you ask. So I've never really had a fear of no. No is just kind of a starting place. To me, it's like, okay, you responded. Now, how can I go about finding out this or that? And you just get creative. And that's the process I like is the research, the creativity. Um, my co-host is like, she did not just ask them if they would come on the show. She's used to it now after 5 years, but in the beginning, I would just see her eyes get really big. And I just figured, what's the worst that can happen? They say thank you, but no. Or that person I can't give out there. I'll ask them and get back to you. Okay. You don't know until you ask a question. So that and that goes for going to your doctor. That goes for your family. That goes for every aspect of your life. You don't know unless you ask. And you can't ask questions unless you have done the research yourself. You've done the work yourself and say, okay, I deserve to know this. I deserve to ask this. And so I think for women, especially, we need to realize that we deserve a lot more than we think we do. And part of that is speaking up for yourself.
I love that. I love that. Um, what challenges did you specifically face when you were starting out and how did you overcome them?
So, starting out the podcast
Mhm.
specifically, I had no experience, nor did Bridget, in doing a podcast. So we had to start from scratch. And let me just say thank you, YouTube, because if I hadn't watched YouTube videos, I don't know if I would have done that. And you can always learn something new. So I think our first take of our intro took like 7 or 8 hours because we wanted perfection. We didn't realize sometimes it's presence over perfection. Just be present, get it out. And as we learned the technical aspects, what microphones to use, what, editing equipment to use, never think that you can't learn something new because someone else has already done it. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can learn. And I also wasn't afraid to email other podcasts that may have done something different, but I like the format and say, do you have 10 minutes to jump on a call? Let me ask you some questions. And 9 times out of 10, they were really helpful. So if someone is doing something in a career where they're really starting out, find the people that have already done it because usually, not all, but usually they're happy to share what they've done and little tidbits that, seem simple to them, but you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that or
Right.
know that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's what I would say is just don't be afraid to ask questions and contact people who've already done it.
So the biggest takeaway that I keep hearing for anybody who's having any kind of fears is the worst that somebody can say is no.
Right.
Ask
Or
the
they don't
question.
respond at all. Or they're not, I think when you're in your 20s and 30s, it's that fear of what are they going to think of me? Oh my gosh, are they going to think that I'm some crazy person or are they going to think that I'm unprofessional or that and then you realize they're not thinking about you at all. They're just answering a question. They're not making a judgment call. They've got 7 things on their plate. You ask them a question, they either say, let me get back to you, or no, or great, I would love to. But you're never going to, once you get over that fear of what is someone going to think of me, and that does come with age, by the way. I wish I had known that much
I
younger.
I watch it more and more in myself versus my daughter is 15. She just turned 15. And that oh well, I can't go outside and walk the dog because somebody's gonna see me with, like something on my head. I'm like, it doesn't matter. We're just going outside to take like the neighbors wear pajamas too. It's not just us. And I can see my 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 release as I get older as well. And I can relate to how it was when I was younger, that feeling of
Right.
insecurity. So I see that.
I have 2 daughters, so good luck. But they're great. They're great. They're in their 20s now. We're like all it's awesome. But you one of the reasons why I started the podcast was that I didn't want my daughters to have to fight for information like we did as we got older. I didn't want them to dread their 50s, 60s because so much of what the media portrays is that you're out to pasture.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of I wish I could impart more information in their 20s saying, don't care what anybody else thinks. Like they're honestly not it's none of your business what someone else thinks about you. And that is releasing when you realize that their thoughts are their thoughts. And I love the new book out, Robbins, Let Them.
Mm-hmm.
If they have a negative thought about you, let them. It's not that energy that we waste when we're younger so much on worrying what other people think. It's such great energy when it's turned to, well, what about what I think? Well, how can I use this energy to make a better life, make a better career, make better friends, things like that. It's changing the narrative in your own head.
And what would you say to somebody? A lot of our viewers, a lot of our members of our community are in the healing space, and as a general rule of thumb, not always, but as a general rule of thumb, a lot of people who are in that space have had some kind of trauma or are probably in the people pleasing category or have been at some point. So how do you help them to release that portion in all of this?
That's a great question. If you need help, please get it. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because I think some people, a lot of people think we need to do everything on our own, and that there's this timeline, especially if you're talking about healing. I had Kaplan, I believe it's David Kessler, who talks about the 5 stages of grief, and he added a 6th stage because his son passed away unexpectedly. So he's going to these grieving groups, and his book is behind him, and he's telling me how he has a hat and sunglasses so people don't realize that he's the author of these books, because he's just trying to heal himself. So I think community is so important for every aspect of your life, but especially when you're in the healing process. I think that doing it alone, it's not going to work. And taking time to kind of, we always say self-care is not selfish. And I think for women especially, but men too, we put ourselves last. And it's a very strange feeling for someone to say you're a part of the equation. Like, yes, your kids are up there, your spouse is up there, your friends and family are up there, but you're up there too. So self-care is not selfish. And it's just it's a process. And for so many people, we isolate and we hide, and we're afraid to talk about our healing journeys, and it just makes it harder. It really does. So I would say community is really important for those people going through any kind of trauma or healing. I mean, we've all been there. We've all, especially by your 50s, you probably lost a parent. Maybe been through a divorce, you lost friends. David said, there's all different types of loss. People immediately think that loss is a loved one, and it can be, but it could be the loss of a friendship, the loss of a job, and you're processing. So give yourself time to process that. Did that answer your question?
Oh, thank you. And I think
I felt like I went off on a little tangent there.
that's okay. It's a good reminder too of that importance of not just community but relationships. So I'm a certified happiness trainer as well. In the science of happiness, there's 5 different elements, and the number one predictor of happiness is relational well-being. And
That's interesting.
see that through you can see that through the pandemic. You can see that through the polarity of the climate at the moment. Like when you don't have that strong relationship with other people, we I think we can doubt ourselves, and we don't have somebody saying you're gonna make it. It's gonna be okay. Like, take care of yourself. I know for me personally, it's very easy. I have a social work background as well. Very easy for me to be like, no, you have to take care of yourself, or you're not gonna be any good to take care of somebody else. But taking care of my own self, I can
You
talk
put
myself out of
yourself
that.
down the list. You do. And a lot of the researchers we've spoken to talk about the importance of positive community, and you just referred to that. It's not about the number of friends or people in your friend group. Are they lifting you up? Are they helping you, bring you positive energy? Because it's okay to break up with a friend or set a boundary if that's somehow causing you more stress, more grief, because positivity is so important. And I don't mean false positivity. I'm truly wanting the best for you and having an ear to say, I'm here. Even if you just want me to sit here and have a cup of coffee with you, I'm here. It's so important. It doesn't matter about the quantity. It's really the quality of those friendships.
Yes, definitely, definitely. So speaking of quality and tying it back into the business aspect, are there any what has made you successful and stand out in a competitive market? You mentioned, you know, your podcast is talking about menopause and later life, and it has become such a common, not a common, it's become a lot more of a hot topic, which is
No pun intended.
right? So what have been some strategies that have helped you to stand out? I know you mentioned
Sure.
celebrities, but what else?
Right. Really being careful to research your guests. A lot of people will just say yes. Even in the beginning, like we did, we probably said yes to people we shouldn't have said yes to, but we're very specific on what we're looking for in guests. We get pitched, I mean, at least a dozen plus times a day on certain guests. And it's not that they're not wonderful, they're just not what we're looking for right now because we want listeners to, and it has come back many times for people to say, well, I've been listening to you for years and I know that I can rely on the experts that you have. I can rely on the research that you're talking about. So it's really important to set a bar that you don't go under when you're doing podcasts. Listen to your followers and your viewers. We do a lot of information on our newsletters. So, it's not just the podcast, but we also get in person. We do in person events. We also go to events where the people are that are speaking about the topics that we know our listeners are interested in. So it's a bar we've set that is self set, but we're very careful about that. And I think that is why we're still as successful as we are. Plus, a lot of podcasts don't make it past maybe 7 or 8 episodes, which
Oh,
is
really?
weird. But so 5 years is an anomaly. It's not the norm. And you have to have a passion for what you do. If
Well,
you don't, you have to be authentic.
mhm,
If you're not being authentic, people know it instantly.
mhm.
And so Bridget and I are very honest about, she just had breast augmentation. We're going to talk about that on the podcast. I'm a caretaker for my mom. We're going to talk about it. We don't, we talk about our lives. And I think that resonates with an audience. And we bring on people that are also talking about their lives and it's relatable, And so I think it's important to, you have to, whatever you're doing, you really have to love it and you have to put your energy into it. You can't just do it halfway. That's not going to work and people are going to notice it.
Definitely. Across the board, it doesn't matter what
No.
profession, business, all of that. It shows that whether people are being genuine and care, it shows.
If you're just showing up, that's not enough. People are going to notice it instantly. And if you're trying to act like somebody you're not, people are going to know that instantly. It's just there's an authenticity and an effort, I would say, are really for podcasts. It's really important. Selection of your guests, authenticity, putting in the effort. We edit our own shows, so I make sure that because I want to know what's going out there is what I want to show. And my co-host does the YouTube channel. She has someone who does the videos, but again, she sends them the edits because we know what we want in there. So it's different for every profession, but what I don't think is different is the authenticity and the effort. It's got to be there. You have to do your homework.
And do you have any branding tactics? I mean, you mentioned in-person events and newsletter. Is there anything else that's been really successful for you in that end?
Our the first thing we did was the title Hot Flashes and Cool Topics. That was huge. People loved it. So branding with that title was really great for us. We've used the same logo for the last 5 years, so it's readily identifiable. Again, our we have certain we talk about anything and everything to do with midlife, but there's certain levels that we know we're not going to go below, and there's certain, just quality that we keep for the podcast. And I would do that. I was that way when I was an attorney. I was that way when I was a Pilates instructor. It does, I would get a lot of times people going, wait a second, you're giving up the law to become a Pilates instructor. And it was like a condemnation. And I would laugh because I'd be like, I'm probably more successful as a Pilates instructor than you are as an attorney. Like, it's not about the title, it's about what you bring to what you're doing. And don't worry what other people think. It just doesn't matter. And so I said, whatever you're doing, really put your heart and soul into it and be very diligent in your selections and your choices and talk to other people. Bring them into your circle because someone has probably done what you're doing and find the people that did it well.
That's the key. Unless you want to start like you did when you were trying to figure out how you were going to pivot. You made a list of what you
Exactly.
didn't want, so you could, if you're finding all the podcasts, I don't like this, or I don't.
Right. And it's sometimes it's trial and error, but you have to be willing to try. If you don't, if there's that fear of failure, it's really not there. It's just, okay, this didn't work, try something else. People are so afraid to fail. What happens? So play that out. It doesn't work, you do something else. There's really no failure like class you have to go to or the failure group you're now in. It doesn't exist. And I think we're taught from such a young age that don't fail. You don't want to fail, but sometimes you learn the most when you fail.
Definitely. Most
you
definitely. I call
know
them growth opportunities.
exactly, but tell that to your 15-year-old daughter and she'd be like, yeah, no, mom, that's not a growth. It's just part of the lesson I think of life is that you grow into understanding because you've survived
Right.
things that you used to say, I could never survive this. Oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to survive it. And you do. And you realize, okay, I can survive. I've made it this far. So I think not, this isn't really a failure. It's just a pivot to something else. And so I hope that people realize that don't be afraid to try something simply because it may not work. Because something you may learn along the way that something in there did work and you can pivot to that.
Yes, most definitely. One of the things that I really like to remind people of, whether I'm in any capacity that I'm working with them, when we're trying to look forward, is let's look at what we did, and we're going to start with what worked well first, because your brain is a lot more on board to find the positive if we start with the positive, and then what didn't work and what do you want to do differently. If we start with what didn't work, then all we're going to see is the negative. But there's growth opportunities and everything, and I yeah, that's always a lesson and something that we can move forward with. So I love that you shared
I
that.
agree. No, I agree with you. There's always those little whispers of stuff when
Mm.
you're doing something that said, "Oh, that looked interesting." And again, sometimes it's if you don't know what you want to do, sometimes it's literally picking 5 or 6 things that kind of sparked your interest in looking into them.
Yeah.
You never know where it might lead.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom. The last but not least important question that I have for you is, what does healing the world mean to you?
That's such a big idea, isn't it? Healing the world. But I think for me, it's one person at a time. So if I can heal my world and the people in it, I think that is a domino effect to healing other people. I don't presume to know the cure to cancer or, had it, gosh, in these very strange times that we live in, know how to make it so that people can get along better. But I think with kindness and healing the people that are closest to you, that kind of snowballs into bigger.
I love that. Thank you. And
Thank you.
where can our guests find you? Anything?
Oh, we are everywhere. Um, the podcast you can listen to for free on any podcast platform. We have our website, which is hotflashescooltopics.com. We have a great YouTube channel that has a lot of the videos, and we also do some fun videos on there as well. So that's also all under the same name, Hot Flashes Cool Topics. And we're on Instagram, everywhere, TikTok, you name it. We're there. But if they have questions, they can always email us at hotflashescooltopics@gmail.com.
Great. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate this and value all that you shared.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This was so fun.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the She Heals the World talk show. To find out how you can grow your purpose-driven business, visit us at www.shehealstheworld.com.